Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Hope you're keeping well and all is good with you. Been relatively busy as ever during the last few weeks. I am a Tottenham Hotspur fan. I've mentioned this before. A couple of weekends ago, Tottenham played a pre-season friendly at home and it was our first home game with our Australian manager, and also it was a chance to see Harry Kane play for what I feared might be the last time. As it happened, because it was a friendly, I was able to get hold of another ticket, and it was a bit cheaper as well. The prices were a lot cheaper than they were for league games, so I splashed out and got 2 tickets for the game, and my girlfriend Linda agreed to come along with me. I had taken her to a game before. We went to an FA Cup game against Brighton. She's not the world's biggest football fan, but she doesn't mind watching it if she's actually seen it live at the stadium, but it's very rare I'll get her to watch it on TV. It was on a Sunday afternoon, so we managed to get the train up and back over a weekend, which is not always as easy as it sounds at the moment, is it, with the various strikes and the constant engineering work with the rail network. It was actually quite a nice sunny afternoon, which I think always makes things a lot more pleasant. I'm a season ticket holder at Spurs, so I go to every home game. Now, I absolutely love it, but sometimes in December and January, when it's absolutely freezing, you kind of forget how nice and relaxing and warm and cosy it can be when the sun's shining and you're just playing a pre-season friendly that doesn't really mean anything. The game was against Shakhtar Donetsk, the Ukrainian league side, so as you can imagine, it was done as a charity fundraiser to give money to Ukrainian charities. Now, I couldn't actually get my normal season ticket for the game, so I had to get some seats elsewhere. I managed to get some seats about 6 rows from pitch side. I do like being close to the action, so I really enjoy sitting in those sort of areas. My actual season ticket is a lot higher up, so it was nice to have a change of scenery. The game itself was very much a pre-season friendly. We happily won the game 5-1. Harry Kane scored 4 goals. Now, at that point, there were lots of strong rumours that he may be looking to leave the football club. And at that point, I guess I thought he probably would stay. I thought he might want to break Alan Shearer's Premier League goal-scoring record. He's got a young family with another child on the way, so I thought he may well stay. Watching that friendly, the way he celebrated all 4 of his goals, the fact that he took a bit of extra time to clap the fans when he was substituted about 10 minutes before the end of the game, and at full time he walked around every side of the ground. There was some clapping, there was some waving. I was trying to study his body language, and from his body language I was convinced that was it. At that point I sadly knew Harry Kane was definitely gone. He was going to leave. And as it turns out, I was right. A week later he finally left us to join Bayern Munich. That said, we had a good day out at the football. Both of us enjoyed it. And the interesting thing was, Harry Kane got the 4 goals, came through our academy, has been a great servant while he was at the club. The 5th goal that day was scored by Dane Scarlett, who has come through our academy. He's a young striker just starting to make his way. It just seemed like potentially a nice way to hand over the baton. I mean, if Dane could go on to score even a third of the goals that Harry did at Tottenham, he will still be a success. I will return to Football and Spurs briefly at the end of this episode. I had to have a blood test recently, just a routine one. It was just a general check, well-being, health thing. So I went along for that. Now, I've had quite a few blood tests over the years for various things. In fact, when I was 8 or 9, I actually had a bit of an issue which led to me having to have a bit of a blood transfusion and a couple of pints of blood put in. So I'm quite used to being given blood and having blood taken away from me. This was the first time, however, I actually received a bruise from a blood test. Never happened before. Normally there's a tiny little pinprick that might be there for an hour, maybe a day. This time, the next day after the blood test, my arm was pretty much purple, and it's taken a couple of weeks to go down. So that was a bit of a surprise. I don't know if she took more blood than normal this time, the nurse who was doing it, because I can't look when I have any needles in my arm. I don't mind it. I'm not scared of it. I'm not worried about it. It's nothing like that. I'm just very squeamish and don't like the sight of blood, especially my own, if I'm honest. For that reason, I can't even watch things like Casualty. I certainly can't watch anything that involves an operation on TV. Have to hide my eyes. Hate it. Although I wasn't looking, for the first time ever, I could actually hear the little vials filling up with blood as well. Sounded like she had the tap turned on, so I'm not sure how much she took. Anyway, it's all fine. The bruise is cleared. We're all good. My girlfriend and I, we're quite keen on weekends away, weeks away, just getting away, seeing new places, doing new things. We've got a couple of friends who live in a place called Congleton, which is kind of between Stoke-on-Trent and Manchester, to give it some sort of rough geographical description. So we went up there the other weekend with another couple. So Linda and I and one couple got an Airbnb and booked in for a couple of nights in the town. And obviously we met up with the couple who lived there already. Worked perfectly fine. We moseyed on up there on the Friday afternoon. Traffic, as you'd expect for heading up the M1 on a Friday afternoon, was pretty dreadful. But we got there in the end, found the Airbnb, got ourselves sorted out. Other couple arrived, and then the couple who lived just down the road arrived. As it happens, their house was only about 10-15 minutes walk away from the Airbnb we booked, so that all worked out lovely. We then went for some drinks at one of the pubs in the town. It's quite a small town, but I must say it has an interesting array of bars. There's cocktail bars, there's wine bars, there's proper ale pubs. It really does have something for everyone in quite a small area. The pub we went into, it showed all of the sports, so there was football on the screens for the start of the Premier League season. It also had a dartboard, which is fine, but we ended up sitting in some seats right near the dartboard. Then you've really got to rely on how good those players are. I must confess, I did find it a little bit hard to relax when there was someone just over my right shoulder throwing darts at a dartboard. Luckily, no new earring holes or random piercings occurred while we were sat there. After that, it was back to the Airbnb. We ordered some takeaway pizza, mainly due to me and my celiac gluten-freeness. It was just easier to order from somewhere I knew I could order a gluten-free pizza that are also celiac accredited. So we did that, and we were just there chatting. The funniest bit of that evening, one of Linda's mates was trying to tell a story about something that had happened to her. It took her about an hour to tell this story, because Linda, who may have had one or two glasses of wine by this point, and she wasn't meaning to do this, but she just managed to interrupt this person every time there was a slight gap or they drew breath. It wasn't always her fault. She was being the hostess, as always, so she was occasionally just popping to the kitchen to get a drink or get some food to bring out. But as she'd come back into the room, if it was silent, she'd then be off chatting. And honestly, it took about an hour for this story to be told. Next day, we went for a nice walk around the village and on to the couple who actually lived there. They were doing us a late brunch. I must say that was fantastic. They made sure pretty much everything was gluten-free so I could enjoy it safely, and anything that wasn't, they kept it away from me, and it all worked out fine. I am a pain when I go anywhere, but it is appreciated when people manage to accommodate me and make me feel comfortable. So that was great. Also as well, they've got a dog called Merlin, who is a Cavapoo, and he's very cute. So cute, in fact, and so photogenic, he has his own Instagram page. Although he hasn't been posting much recently, he's been keeping a low profile. Sad though it is, I was really keen on seeing him when we went out for the weekend. I actually said to Linda on the way up, I hope we get to see Merlin while we're there. And we did, so I made sure I had a bit of a stroke, made a bit of a fuss over him, so that was good. And the other thing I like about a late brunch when there's lots of people, not only is the food good, proper fry up, you basically, or I do anyway, get to drink lots of tea and just chat. And there's nothing I like more than having some tea and just endlessly chatting to people. So that was good. Then it was back out to town. Amongst the couples, there's two who were very big on the rugby. So we went and watched the England against Wales rugby union game in a pub, which was nice. And then we did a couple of more pubs, a mini pub crawl, if you will. And then they'd found a restaurant that, again, was good with gluten-free and fine with looking after celiacs. So we went there and had a lovely meal. That was really nice. The food was great. The staff were fantastic as well. They had some really odd male urinal toilets, which I know is an odd subject to talk about, but the three gentlemen amongst us, we couldn't remember seeing anything that looked like them anywhere we'd been in the past. I don't know if it's new eco-friendly design or if they just wanted to be more quirky. It was a pleasant surprise from the normal troughs. Let's put it that way. We were almost the last people to leave the restaurant, predictably, so when they eventually kicked us out of there, we went back to the Airbnb, and then that was it for the weekend. We had to be out relatively early, so shot back home the next day. But it was a fun weekend. It's a place I like. It's quite a nice, relaxed, chilled vibe to the place, and I'm sure we'll end up back there again. Last weekend happened to be quite a family-orientated weekend. Family parties on my mum's side suddenly appear to be like buses. You don't have any for ages, then two come along at once. Last Saturday afternoon, my auntie and uncle held a party to celebrate their diamond wedding anniversary, which, let's be honest, is quite some achievement. They hired a local hall, so I went along there for a bit to catch up with everybody. Not really seen any of my mum's side of the family, I think, since before the first COVID lockdown. So it's been a while since we've all been together, and there are lots of us. My mum is one of 7 sisters. They've all been married, got kids, grandkids, and most of them great-grandkids. In fact, several of my cousins are already grandparents as well. Now, I only made a brief fleeting appearance. I did find out while I was there, and I think this is a nice touch. For a diamond wedding anniversary, you can request a card from the King and the Queen, and they had one signed by the King and the Queen, wishing them a happy anniversary, which I thought was a lovely touch. It was actually a party that was scheduled to be on for 4 hours. I made sure I got there right at the start and tried to get round and talk to as many people as possible, as I only had an hour to spend there because it was Tottenham's first home Premier League game of the season, and I had to be there, had to be in that seat for that game. So I made an appearance, wished the celebrated couple all the best, spoke to as many people as I could, and then disappeared up to London to watch the game. But as I said, it was very much a weekend of parties. So the next morning, my cousin was getting her daughter christened. Now, the church was actually the one that was associated to my school. I went to a C of E school. This was the affiliated church, so I used to go there a lot when I was a child at school growing up. I've been to countless concerts, harvest festivals, all sorts of services at this place. In fact, once, me and my best mate from school ended up playing monks in a play that we put on in the church. It is a lovely church, and the vicar is fantastic. He did a brilliant job with the service. The only thing about this christening, and it was a little bit unfortunate, it did clash with the Women's World Cup final in Australia. The dad of the girl that was getting christened is a football fan, but he booked the christening a long time ago, and I don't think he really realised when the World Cup final was in case England got there. In his head, I think he thought it was going to be the Saturday, and also I think he may have not really been thinking about the time difference as well, and the fact that it was taking place in Australia. So we managed to watch most of the first half before the christening, disappeared off there for that. Once again, it was nice to see so many of my family, lots of whom I'd seen only very briefly the day before. As I said, like buses, you don't see them for ages, then you see them twice in 2 days. The star of the show, by the way, the little girl getting christened, was absolutely perfect. Took it all in her stride, no tears, just smiles, waving, and some laughter as well. So that part of it all went very well. My dad actually did a reading, which he did fantastically well. So that was all good. So it was just a fun time in the church. Although as soon as the service had wrapped up and we were leaving the church, everybody was straight on their phones to see the latest from the World Cup. Just on that, I thought the Lionesses were fantastic. They had a slow start, but they built on that and they were getting through games, winning games. They're such a talented squad of players. The attitude's great. The coach is fantastic. They've done brilliantly well to get to that World Cup final. Sadly, it wasn't quite to be at the last hurdle. Spain are a very good team, despite the fact, strangely, they've not really had any big success in world women's football. When you bear in mind, Barcelona are pretty much the best European women's team, highlighted probably by the fact that a couple of our big players are part of their squad. Disappointing though it was, everything to be proud of, nothing to be upset about. They gave it their best go and gave us plenty of excitement and entertainment on the way. In 4 years' time, a lot of that squad are still young enough to be there again. It could be our time then. Once we've managed to get out of the church, I actually popped home for about 10-15 minutes because it was all taking place locally near to where I live, the reception part of the christening too. So I did watch the final 15 minutes or so of the game. Just couldn't quite claw it back. The christening party was again good. It was taking place at the community centre in the town where I live, a place that I think I first started going to when I was about 7 or 8. We used to do football training in there in the winter when you couldn't go outside with sponge balls. So I've been in and around that place for a lot of years now. They built it up and put a new extension on it with a bar area, and we were in there. My cousin, who's the mum of the baby getting christened, is very good at organising things. It was very well run, the afternoon part. There was lots of food, including one of her friends is also gluten-free, and another one of my cousin's wives is also gluten-free. So there was a special gluten-free section of the food. Her sister works in a nursery, and there was quite a few young children there. So she borrowed a soft play area from her nursery and set that up, which was a genius idea because it did keep all the small children amused and kept them relatively quiet and gave actually their parents a little bit of a break if they took it in turns overseeing the area to make sure everybody was safe. So that all worked out perfectly. I managed to get round and talk to pretty much all of my cousins and aunties and uncles at the event, which was great. When you've got such a big family, you just don't see each other as often as you like to. It's very rare we all get together in the same room. So as you can imagine, there's lots of catching up to do, but it was great to see everybody had a thoroughly fantastic time. It was a really nice weekend. We're trying to work out when the next big event may be, when we can all get together, but we're not sure. Now, any big party or event that involves me is just huge because, as I said earlier, my mum is one of 7. They've all got kids, grandkids, lots of them as well now. My dad is one of 6, and it's the same scenario. If I have to do a party, family alone, and I'm talking family just down to cousins, I can probably get up to about 70 people, and that easily goes to 90 when I start adding in cousins' children and cousins' children. It doesn't half ramp up, and that's before I've even invited any of my friends. The Premier League season is back underway. Tottenham done well, I thought, in our first game away at Brentford, getting a 2-2 draw. I think that will be a difficult place to go. I don't think many teams will get much change out of them at home this year. And then, as I said, I had to dash off from the anniversary party to get to Spurs Stadium to watch our first home game against Manchester United. The atmosphere there was fantastic. We played really well. Things are coming together under the new manager despite losing Harry Kane. And we won 2-0, which was fantastic. It made a good weekend even better. If you support a football team like I do, whether they win, lose, play well or play poorly, it shouldn't, but it really can affect your weekend a little bit. So basically, with the football, the anniversary party and the christening, I had a brilliant weekend last weekend. Just the usual reminder that you can listen to my radio show on radio9springs.com Saturdays between 2 and 4. But that is it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. Look after yourselves and each other, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.